guys, and welcome to another Dark Rain video. This time I'm going to be showing you my fire tank guide. Now what I'll be doing with this guide is I'll be running you through the loadout I've typically been running in more challenging content and how I go about using it to maximise my survivability. So since fire was updated quite recently, the tanking side of it anyway, it's become a lot more survivable than it already was. Now, I personally believe that fire never really had any problems with survivability. It received heals so easily from healers that they were exceptionally easy to keep alive. But since some of their powers have been changed, it is now even easier for you to keep your toon standing whilst fire tanking. The only thing it's really lacking is good CC effects, but we'll go through all of that in a minute. So the loadout, what have I been running in more challenging content? So typically, I will run with Eternal Flame, Backdraft, Mesmerizing Lasso, Stoke Flames, Burning Determination and Burnout. Now Eternal Flames, if I'm running something lower where I don't expect to be challenged too heavily, I will drop Eternal Flames and I'll put in something like Enflame just for a bit of extra crowd control ability if there are multiple adds. But since that isn't really the case in lockdown, people can go down randomly, be quite unlucky, get caught out not blocking if the deadly beams are in place, and if that happens to be your troll or your healer or even both at the same time, something like Eternal Flames will keep you standing for an absolute minimum of 15 seconds. Now you can have two of those stacked up ready to go as well. It is exceptionally useful, guys. If you run out of power and you can't cast self-heals anymore, you can't cast pulls anymore, run near the adds, hit Eternal Flame, and it sets them on fire. And now because you've hit them for a yellow number, you've also taunted them. So hopefully they'll leave your allies alone and leave them free to pick your other dead allies up, and it will also keep you alive. I'll be testing Eternal Flame in something later on, and I'll show you just how beast it is. It's ridiculous the amount of heals that thing can punch out. When it's up and active, I'd say you're essentially invincible for that amount of time, unless you are hit by a devastating one-shot, so something that hits you harder than your entire health pool. But if you're sat in block and you have fortified blocking on, the likelihood of that happening is extremely slim. So the next power on my bar is Backdraft, and Backdraft happens to be fire's only pull in its power set, and it is a really good pull. Its AoE is a little small and its cooldown is a bit longer than I'd like it to be, so if you cast it when the enemy is flashing white with immunity, you can't move them, which I think is quite annoying. When they're white with immunity, yeah, I don't mind them not being block broken or things like that, but I should always be able to manipulate them and pull them towards me, otherwise it's very difficult to control the enemy. Backdraft also has a nice little bonus mechanic with it. So when you cast it, provided the enemy is on fire, you will receive a heal once Backdraft's animation has been completed. And I've seen it hit anywhere between 1500 and 2500, depending on your heal chance at the time. So the next power on my bar, I've been using Mesmerizing Lasso. Now why have I taken that, I hear you cry? Well, basically it's a very good single target pull. It also stuns the enemy once it hits them, and it is fairly spammable, so it's extremely useful for a fire tank, especially a fire tank that's a speedster that can't pull people from range. So what I do is, instead of getting close to the enemy and hitting Backdraft, because that's got a sizable cooldown, I will throw Mesmerizing Lasso into a new group of enemies, and 9 times out of 10 they all turn around and look at you anyway, because Mesmerizing Lasso is designed to overwrite other taunts, so it is pretty powerful. Then once I have the enemy's attention and they're all nice and close to me, I'll hit Backdraft to drag them all in nice and tight so that the DPS have got a nice tight group to burn down for me. Next up on my bar, guys, is Stoke Flames. It's a really good heal over time once cast off your bar. It does only function though for about 60% of its cooldown. So if you're looking at Stoke Flames on your bar, once it gets to about 60% of that clock, it stops functioning. But whilst it's active, it punches out a heal every half a second or so, and they're fairly decent heals as well, better than some of my other heal over times on my electric toon. Another useful thing about Stoke Flame, guys, is one, it will set the enemy on fire, so you can use it as a taunt. if there are multiple groups in the area and I know I can't pull them all with backdraft, or I need to get around them as quickly as possible, I'll run by them and hit Stoke Flames. It sets them on fire. They go, ooh, there's a fire tank over there, and then they chase you down. Really useful for that. Plus, Stoke Flames can be used whilst you are controlled or knocked down. So if you find yourself block broken and you start taking a great deal of damage, hit Stoke Flames, and it's going to give you a great heal over time for the next few seconds or so. Now, it may not keep you standing if you're getting absolutely smashed by multiple enemies, but your heals are more there to complement your healer's heals. You are still reliant on them to a certain degree, but you don't need them as heavily as you used to. Next up, the power on my bar is Burning Determination, which in my opinion is slightly overpowered, but only in certain content. So when you hit Burning Determination, you will receive a heal for every time you are struck by an enemy. Now, the heal you receive when struck is entirely dependent on your healer stats, if that makes sense. So it's entirely dependent on how much resto you have, your crit chance, your crit mag, things of that nature. Now, when you set off Burning Determination, you will receive heals for every time you are struck by an enemy, but a maximum of 10 heals. So if you are taking heavy damage and multiple red numbers, Burning Determination will not last as long. But if you're only getting hit every now and then, Burning Determination will last even longer than its cooldown. So it can be up permanently and is extremely useful on single boss targets, especially if you stack that with Stoke Flames. The heals you will receive are immense and it increases your survivability by quite a deal. Not only that, Burning Determination serves as a breakout for you and makes your teammates, all 8 of them, immune to crowd control effects for a short time. And the final power on my bar, guys, is Burnout. Now, this is probably my least used power when I am fire tanking. Not for any particular reason, it's just that I don't seem to need it a great deal of the time. So why have it on my bar? Basically, it's for emergencies. When I'm tanking, the group are obviously my main priority. So that's why I use things like Eternal Flame to ensure that I stay standing, and it's why I use Burnout. Let's say I get interrupted and knocked down, and Burning Determination is on cooldown, as is Stoke Flame, so I can't activate that to give myself some heals while I'm lying on the floor. Burnout will stand you up. Great power, to be fair. And as soon as you cast it, if you're in and amongst a group of enemies when you cast it, it will knock them back as well. It does give you a heal when you cast it, but it's a small heal, say 2000, and it does nothing else after that. Burnout is definitely a power that I just use to break me out of those oh crap moments. So, how do I go about 1, staying alive as a fire tank, and 2, probably the more difficult thing as a fire tank is crowd control. So I'm going to talk you through a couple of bits and bobs on what I do. So my priority pull is mesmerizing lasso. I use that bad boy quite often just to try and pull the ads in closer to me, and then I use something like backdraft in order to tidy that group up. I don't like using it too often to crowd control because its cooldown is quite sizable and I don't want to miss the chance to pull an enemy in if I don't have to. As for fire's self-heals, just keep them up. You may as well keep them up as often as possible because the likelihood is you will be taking damage consistently and you may as well be complementing the heals you're receiving from your healer anyway. If you're in an alert and you don't have a healer, I wouldn't worry about it. The likelihood of you going down as a fire tank is extremely slim. 1, you will have the rollless healer buff anyway, so your life will gradually tick up. But the heals you receive from Stoke Flames and Burning Determination will keep you standing, guys. Just try not to stack them both at the same time because it will leave you without heals for a prolonged period of time. So try and do them half and half where possible. There are occasions where a hefty amount of damage will come in and you may need them both at the same time. But once that's done, you better hope you've got something like Eternal Flame left over, because if you continue to take heavy damage and there's no healer around at the time, or you're out of their range, or whatever, something like Burnout will not save you. Neither will Backdraft. You will be better off sitting in block and just riding through the storm. Now let's have a talk about tanking higher content. So let's say you are fire tanking Love and War with this particular loadout. It is an extremely annoying raid to tank because the ads and the bosses drop aggro so often it is absolutely ludicrous. So you may end up being fairly power hungry as you have to spam mesmerizing, lasso, backdraft, whatever in order to maintain your aggro. I have noticed on occasions that sometimes all of a sudden my aggro will drop, and I'm not sure if it's a problem with fire at the minute or not, but it can be quite frustrating. So basically all you've got to do, guys, is stay on top of your crowd control. If you're in content and you find that some of your controllers are trying to help you out and they've stunned a few ads here and there and those ads remain in that stun position and you can't shift them, don't worry about them for now. All you've got to do is sling a pull or backdraft or strike them with some form of yellow number and you will aggro them for the next 12 seconds, provided during that time they don't aggro dump. Now once you've done that, when they break out of their stun eventually, they will come for you. So all you've got to do is make sure you've kept aggro on top of these people. If when tanking you also find that one of the enemy is constantly flashing white and keeps somehow getting immunity out of your teammates, don't spam pulls on him. Don't keep spamming a pull in order to get him towards you. Don't worry about shifting him. As long as he's not in between the line of sight of you and your teammates, they should move. It's not down to you to move your teammates around, it's down to you to move the ads. And if they're too stupid to move out the line of sight, then more fool them. Once you've slung a pull on them, you have aggroed them and they will come for you. So don't worry about that. Right guys, I think I've been talking to you for long enough now. This video has gone on for some time. But I hope this fire tanking guide helps some of you out there who are a bit confused about how the powers function or how to go about crowd controlling with fire. Yes, it is more difficult than say Ice or Rage, as they have decent AoE pools, and Rages is just OP when it comes to crowd control. They're so spammable and they can just spam AoE pools from all over the place. Ice obviously has a ranged AoE pool that is pretty effective and fairly spammable. Earth I'd say is on par when it comes to crowd control, it's just that its survivability is not as good. But as for your survivability, you have one of the greatest survivability powers in the game. That I am absolutely certain of. Fire is amazing and it's such a great deal of fun. It's really unique with its playstyle. So if you can get good with this power, boys, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Really appreciate you taking the time out to come and watch the video. We are Dark Rain. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you in game.